How's it going, everyone? This is Mike, and I'm here to do an episode of Genre Files. I think this is episode 14, I believe. And there goes the clock, so we'll just let it play. Anyway, okay, Genre Files this week is the subject is musicals, and I've already watched the videos done by DVD Collector 1974, James, and Forkerball, whose name is Ian. So I'm going to do mine here, and I watched I watched Ian's video. He did a commentary about the musical West Side Story, and which I have here, and I'm going to do the same thing. At the end of Ian didn't like West Side Story. He had a lot of really kind of cutting things to say about the film. It's kind of funny in a lot of places. He really did not like the movie. And at the end, he made the comment. He said that he brought my name up, and he said, this seems like the kind of movie that Mike would like. So I took that as kind of a challenge. I don't think he meant it that way, but I'm going to take this as a challenge to give my opinion of the film. And so, Ian, this is my video response to your video about West Side Story. So here we go. And just to say, first off, that everybody's opinion counts, and nobody likes everything that somebody else likes. So there are no rules, you know. I mean, there are a lot of films that people talk about on here, all of my friends, films that either I haven't seen or I have very little interest in, or I don't like at all. So usually I don't comment on them. But it's kind of cool to start a conversation. So here are my feelings about West Side Story. Okay, made in 1961, the best picture of that year, winner of 10 Academy Awards. I absolutely love this movie. I watched it all the way through last night, getting ready for this video, and it had been quite a while since I'd seen it. So a lot of it was completely fresh, a lot of things that I had forgotten, and I was very moved by it. After it was over, I played back a lot of the scenes to watch them again and again. The final scene, which ended in tragedy, I played the overture several times, and I don't know. I love it. I've always loved this movie. Now, when this movie first came out in 1961, I did not go to see it. I don't really have any idea why, but I didn't. And I saw it maybe 7 or 8 years later. It was re-released to theaters when I was in high school, so I went to see it then and fell in love with it. But even before I saw it, I knew all the music. My sister went to see it when it first came out, and she immediately went out and bought the soundtrack album, which she played incessantly because she was a singer, and she sang a lot of this music at different shows. She sang some of the music at weddings and things like that. So she fell in love with the music, and I played the record too. And I knew all of the music to West Side Story years before I actually went to see it. We used to play this music when I was a musician in high school, grade school and high school. We played this music. We had to sing it in our music classes in school. I mean, everybody knew Maria and Tonight and all these wonderful songs. So I think it's something that just about everybody in my generation was familiar with. And so West Side Story is based on the film is based on a play which had debuted in 1957. Now, it is primarily a combination of opera, ballet, and telling a contemporary story. And all of it is based on Romeo and Juliet. That's where it comes from. It's about two young people from different walks of life who fall madly in love, share this great passion, and then it all ends in tragedy and sadness. So the whole thing is based on Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. And everything about the sets in the film, the design, the way that the musical numbers are staged, the way they look, it's all so highly stylized to present a fantasy much more than it is a realistic kind of celebration. The story is meant to be contemporary and meaningful to modern audiences, but at the same time, the way it breaks into the musical numbers is meant to just take you into a realm of fantasy. Unlike a lot of American musicals, even going farther back into the 1950s and 1940s, where the music was a part of the situation of the story rather than a staged performance, right? They tried to make the music realistic and believable. in West Side Story, it was supposed to be a combination of all of those things meant to grab your heart and give you a message. But at the same time, it was almost like watching. In many places, it was like watching a filmed Broadway play. I don't consider that to be a problem, a bad thing, because I think that the way the music was presented, the dancing is just exuberant and energetic and so contemporary that I think that it did everything. It served the story well, and it to me it was the American musical at its absolute peak. I think it was just brilliant, and in a way, especially when the movie is first starting out, there are several musical numbers and dance sequences that happen very close together, and in a way, the dialogue between the numbers is just kind of there to give you something to do while you're waiting for another musical number to start. You're waiting for people to start singing or to start dancing. So um, Ian mentioned that it took a long time for the movie to start, that they were just playing a lot of music on a screen that was changing color. Now, the reason for that is this film had an overture, as a lot of movies in those days did, especially epic films. They would have overtures before they start the film. They would have music during the intermission. This is a very long film, over 2.5 hours long. So they had an intermission, and a lot of movies, when they would be that long, theaters would just have a screen that said intermission, right? But a lot of films, such as this, would provide music during the intermission, and some movies would even have exit music for people as they were leaving the theater, right? So West Side Story took a long time to start because they had an overture, and the what you were seeing on the screen was a contemporary painting that kept changing colors, and then finally, as the overture was coming to an end, the screen kind of the camera kind of moved back a little bit, and you could see the title of the film, West Side Story, come up. And then as the overture ended, what you saw on the screen that you couldn't tell the shape of actually turned into an aerial view of New York City, the island of Manhattan. It was brilliant. And then the camera changed to another aerial view of the city, just like flying over the city, and then going to the neighborhood on the west side where all of this took place. And then you see the gang, the Jets, right? And they're all snapping their fingers in rhythm, and they start walking in rhythm, not in any normal way where a bunch of guys would walk through their neighborhood. It was all done in a stylistic way. And then as they walk down the street, they start doing these kind of ballet movements, you know, expressing their feelings through dance. And it's like the movie was expressing the feeling of anguish and the feeling of energy and passion through the dance movements. And as the film progressed, though, it seemed as though the story became more and more important, and there was a little bit less music as the film became more and more serious, and the interaction between the characters and the dialogue became more and more realistic and believable. For example, there was a scene where the character of Anita, played by Rita Moreno, who won a Best Supporting Actress award for this film, she's very, very good, went to the drugstore where all of the gang members from the Jets were hanging out. She wanted to go there to give a message to Tony from Maria, the girl that he loved. And when she got there, because she went there by herself, she was accosted by all the guys in the gang, and they started getting really rough and rude with her, insulting her, pushing her around, and almost getting to the point where they had her on the ground and looked like they were going to assault her sexually before it all stopped. And it was just done brilliantly. She was brilliant in that scene, and it was a highly choreographed scene, like any, you know, conflict or fight in a movie, but it was all very believable. In that sense, there was no stylistic fantasy. So the film had many things going into it. It had many facets to it, and I just wow, I don't know how you could. Well, to me, I don't know how you could not love the music, and I thought all the actors were good. Richard Beamer, who played Tony, was certainly. I mean, he never really became a big name star, but he was brilliant for this. Natalie Wood, whom a lot of people think was not a good actress in this film, or not a good actress at all. She was in 1961. She was actually at the peak of her career. She peaked very early because that was not only the year that she did this movie, in which I thought she was brilliant, but she also did Splendor in the Grass, which is probably her other greatest role, and for which she was nominated for a Best Actress Oscar. Rita Moreno, as I said, had been around for quite a while. She had been doing movies since at least 1952. She was very young. She was had a small part in Singing in the Rain, and then a couple of years later, she was in The King and I, and then so she kind of reached she got her big chance in this film. And George Takiris had been a dancer in films for a long time. You could see him in dancing next to people like Marilyn Monroe and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, just one of the guys dancing in the chorus. And then so he got his big chance to do this. He had been in the Broadway play, it was a big success, and then he also got a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for West Side Story. So I love it. I love everything about it. I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to say. I guess I want to show you the package I got here, which I got several years ago. 2-disc set, which has, let's see. Here's the, open it up for you here. Sorry, there's always a glare whenever I'm doing a video. Here are the 2 discs. Just a beautiful package. Now the second disc has the extra features that has an hour-long commentary or documentary about the film, which I did not watch last night. I haven't watched it for a while, so a lot of things about it I don't remember. One thing I do remember is that Natalie Wood recorded all of her songs. You know, she actually had a pretty good voice, and it plays some of her singing in here. But for some reason, they decided not to use her voice. They wanted to use somebody who was more professional. So they hired Marni Nixon, who a name you might recognize. She was somebody who had a great career at covering for actresses who couldn't sing. For example, Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady. And Marni Nixon has a beautiful voice. At the end, you do get to hear Natalie Wood sing. In the dramatic scene at the end, she does a small reprise of Somewhere, where she sings to Tony. So you do get to hear her sing there. There's also a beautiful booklet that goes along with the package. It has the entire screenplay for the film, and it's loaded with a lot of articles, a lot of pictures. Oh, that's really bad there. Okay. Anyway, so it's a beautiful package for a beautiful film, and I'm trying to think. There's something I wanted to read to you here, which might give you an idea of. Okay. I'll just read you very briefly here to kind of give you an overview of what they were trying to accomplish with West Side Story. The title is The American Musical Meets the Inner City. Directed by Robert Wise and Jerome Robbins from Ernest Lehman's magnificent screenplay, this electrifying musical sets the story of Romeo and Juliet against a backdrop of urban violence in 1950s New York, one of the first musicals to take place in the inner city and address such serious issues as racism, gang warfare, and disillusionment with the American dream. West Side Story was a gritty departure from the more gauzy, romanticized settings of traditional musicals. Starring Natalie Wood, Richard Beamer, Russ Tamblyn, Rita Moreno, and George Takiris, West Side Story offered a vibrant new cinematic language that would forever influence the future of American musicals. Set to the unforgettable music by Leonard Bernstein and lyrics by Stephen Sondheim, and pulsing with Robbins' exuberant choreography, the film delivered a transcendent fusion of realism and fantasy that signaled to the world that the Hollywood musical had finally come of age. Now that's interesting because, well, this was the time when the Hollywood musical, no matter how good they were, was still falling out of fashion with audiences. So after West Side Story, and a couple of years later, we had wonderful musicals like, we had My Fair Lady, we had The Sound of Music, but it was a slow and steady decline of musicals, even though they had reached a point where they were making them they were all just spectacular, epic productions. But it's a shame that they were definitely still falling out of fashion. And also to mention Russ Tamblyn, who was another one of the stars of the film, and Russ Tamblyn was one of the best dancers that ever was in a movie. A couple of years before, he had been under contract in MGM, and he had been in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and he did these great athletic backflips and all kinds of twists and turns, and he does a lot of this in West Side Story too. He was one of the guys who came a little bit too late to the Hollywood musical during the time when they were not being made as frequently as they were back in the 30s and 40s. So his chances to just really shine as a musical star, well, he didn't get that many, but in West Side Story, he does some really good stuff, really good work. So, okay, it's 9 o'clock, and I haven't had dinner yet. So we'll let the clock be the exit music for this video. So anyway, if anybody wants to say anything about West Side Story, Ian, I hope you enjoyed my video here, my little video response. So comments are always welcome. Thanks for watching, folks.